Hello, everyone. Welcome to this session of Café New Canadians. We're so happy that you're joining us for this chat, wherein we will be talking to 4 Canadian immigrant women who will be sharing their experiences with us about their Canadian immigration. We will be learning about their journey. And of course, these are all women who are authors of a book called Landed. It's an anthology. And we will be learning more about their chapters as well. My name is Shruti Dargan. And I'm so pleased to welcome my guests today. If I forgot to mention earlier, I would like to include this now that, of course, for those who are joining Café New Canadians for the first time, it's brought to you by New Canadians TV Network. And you can join us. You can follow us in various ways by accessing our content through our YouTube channel, on our website. And of course, if you're in Canada, you can also watch us on TV. Now, in this session, as I was mentioning earlier, I will be joined by 4 women, and the guests that we have today are Gayathri Shukla, Anam Kazim, Martina Mukete, and Charlotte Ong'ang'a. And from them, without any further ado, I would love to hear more about their journey. So welcome to all 4 of you. Let's get talking to you. And I think the best way to begin this chat would be by learning a little bit more about you. So let me also remind everyone joining us, of course, you will have the opportunity to ask questions today. So please don't be afraid of that at all. Share those questions, even if it's a personal one. Our panelists will be so happy to answer those. They will be sharing their journeys, and there's so much that you can learn from their journey. I also want to tell everyone over here that we will be sharing, there's an opportunity for you to win a copy of the book that I mentioned. And that is the only way to enter that lucky draw will be if you're asking questions. So that should be something that should encourage you to ask questions today. And of course, that is the best way to learn more from the panelists. So let's get started. Gayathri, let me begin with you. If you would be kind enough to just share a little bit about yourself, what is it that you do today? And then quickly, I would move on to the others to get to know them as well.
Yeah. First of all, thank you so much, Shruti, for the opportunity to be on this panel. It's a pleasure to be here. So I'm Gayathri. I'm calling in from Calgary, the Treaty 7 region, also home to the Métis Nation Region 3. I am originally from India. I was born in India. I also lived in Saudi Arabia, and I moved to Canada when I was 15. And by professional background, I'm an engineer. I now run a business called Campfire Kinship, and we specialize in storytelling to build cultures of inclusion. So that's what I do now. And of course, I'm very happy and proud to be part of this amazing group of women who have been on this journey with me to publish the book Landed, as you mentioned. I've got it here, Landed, Transformative Stories of Canadian Immigrant Women. So we just published that last year.
Wonderful, thank you. How about Anam, if you could go next, please.
Sure. Thank you very much for having me at this show tonight. I am Anam Kazim, and I am currently based in Toronto, and I'm an entrepreneur. And my focus is on sustainability management. So anything related to sustainability, I can get involved and offer my assistance to organizations or individuals who are focused on achieving sustainability goals. But prior to living in Canada, in Toronto, I was actually based in Calgary. So the story that is in the anthology Landed is actually my entire experience while I was in Calgary. And so there has been a bit of a change in my location since then. Basically, my background is in engineering. I did chemical engineering and afterwards focused on environmental engineering. And then I got involved in politics, and I got elected in Alberta as a member of the Legislative Assembly with Alberta's NDP government back in 2015. And I call myself a multi-potentialite, someone with a broad range of interests and hobbies, and I love learning new things and study different cultures, understanding different perspectives. So that's how I find joy in life, be it in the form of food, conversations, teas, anything that has got has a combination of flavors of a variety of things, and so that's how I roll in my life. And I'm very happy tonight to be joining you all, and looking forward to our discussion.
That's a wonderful introduction. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Martina, could I hear from you next, please?
Hello, everyone. Thank you guys for having me on the show tonight. I'm excited to be here. I work as a program assistant for Natural Science and Research Engineering Council, abbreviated as NSEG. I joined them last year. My background is in public administration. I have my bachelor's degree from Ottawa University. And I also like to write. I have a published poetry book that was published last year. It was on Amazon. It was called Beautiful Scars. Right now, I'm trying to self-publish it myself. So I pulled it out from the publisher. So I'm working on that and other things. So like Anam said, I've lived in so many other countries. I was born in Cameroon, and my parents used to work in China. So I used to go back and forth from Cameroon to China to see my parents. And in 2010, we all migrated to Canada as a family, and I'm the oldest. So I lived in Ottawa for a bit. Then I decided to move by myself to Calgary to explore, because I wasn't getting the things that I thought I would get when I moved to Canada. And I wasn't so happy with staying in Ottawa. And yeah, I moved to Calgary, and I think doors began to open. So that's how my story in the book landed. It's like, you know, you have the challenges, and then somewhere along the line, things start beginning to fall in place, and things start beginning to make sense. And yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. And, you know, I mean, I wanted to just, before I move on to Charlotte, I wanted to share that, of course, our panelists today are largely representing Calgary and Toronto, but everything that they will be sharing applies to you, irrespective of where you are in Canada, or if you're planning to move here, because they will be talking about their immigration journey. They will be talking about, you know, what it was like for them to settle in, get a job, any challenges they faced along the way, and of course, lots and lots of learning by interacting with other immigrants and from their lives as well, irrespective of where you are located. So that's just something that I wanted to share before. Charlotte, please.
Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. I am, where do I start from? Originally from Kenya. I was born and bred in Kenya. I went to school in Kenya, a little bit of my studies in London, in the UK. And then I came here in Canada in 2018. So when I came, I was a full-blown adult and a mother of one then later on my son was born. So professionally, I'm a career development specialist with a PhD in linguistics and many years working at the university. So before I came here, I had worked for 7 years as a professor in the Department of Languages. And when I came here, I had to start something. So that's when I found myself back into career, into career advising. And I say back because I was introduced to employability skills in London when I was doing my master's about 12 years ago now. So last year I met this group of lovely ladies in the Landed Project, and my story is on page 8. And not page 8, but page 35, it's the 8th story. And, you know, on my story, you will see my life growing up in Kenya. So I just bring the lessons I learned as a little girl and how I'm using those as an adult in my new home. And then after that, I became so inspired by the project. So I started writing. So I became an author officially, and I published a book. As a career development specialist, I wanted to support other immigrants to find jobs. So that's why this book was written, to support other immigrants to find jobs in Canada. Thank you.
That's great. So congratulations to all of you, and also all the best for your upcoming projects. Now, of course, all of you mentioned that, you know, there are so many things that you've shared in your chapters. We wouldn't be talking about all because, of course, we want people to go back to the book and read about it. But we will be picking a select few themes from what you have shared in your chapters. And then, of course, to talk about your experience in Canada and then learnings that you have for newcomers currently. But first, I wanted to just ask, it's often something that happens as a newcomer when you land in Canada. There's always that first impression that you have of a new place, right? Very briefly, if you could share your first impression, what was it that stood out to you? Was it the weather? Was it the people? Or anything else that you would like to share? And whoever would like to go first, and then follow on. All right, maybe
can go
Anam.
first.
Perfect.
Yeah. Sure. And also, I forgot to do the land acknowledgement for Toronto. So before I begin, Toronto is located on the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Wendat peoples. Yes, so my impressions, so when I came to Canada, I came with my sister and my parents. We landed in Toronto, and it was a stormy night. I remember it was in the middle of the night and the storm was severe. It was December 22nd, so the December snowstorms are very severe in Toronto. So when we arrived, I could hear the howling of the winds and the snow through the windows of the airport. However, I found the people at the airport itself to be very welcoming, and it was a very warm welcome. So I just felt that warmth, that I am in the right place at the right time, and whatever is appearing to be adventurous by looking at the snowstorm and the dark night and the lack of visibility, it was actually leading me to more clarity, basically, because that reassurance I got was when I felt being taken care of and being supported through the warm welcome by the staff at the airport, as well as my relatives who came to pick us up. So there was a sense of warmth that I felt, and that I belong here, or I'm in the right place or in the right hands.
Yeah. I think you're speaking of the experience that so many have, right? The weather, of course, I think stands out, and especially for anybody who's dared to land here in the winter. I mean, I applaud their courage. All right, who would like to go next? Martina, maybe?
For me, my first impression when I first came to Canada as a teenager, it was a shock, mixed feelings, because I was already 19 and I'd already started university back home, and my parents are like, you're stopping because we have to go. And also coming from Africa, I grew up in Cameroon up to when I was 19, even though I had exposure of going to China, but we all felt like North America is superior, because you're thinking it's close to America. We watch all the videos, the social media. Back then, we already had Facebook, and you had other friends who had already traveled, or family members. So you have this big dream of like, where I'm going to go is just going to be like this big, great place and fantastic and everything. And I wasn't expecting to see places that look very like simple or local or rural areas like in Africa. I was just dreaming of like, I'm just going to this wonderland and all that. But the shock is when we landed in Ottawa. Ottawa is very traditional and simple for a capital city. I mean, Beijing is the capital of China, and it's so beautiful compared to like Ottawa. And that was my shock. And I remember asking my mom, are you sure this is our last destination? Are we taking another flight? I wasn't so happy. And also like that transition, moving to China and then coming here, China is so different from Canada. Like it's so busy, there's a bigger population. And so the streets in Ottawa were very quiet because we came in the fall.
Mm-hmm.
And that was another shock because my siblings, I'm the oldest, my younger sister kept asking, where's everyone? And myself too, I felt depressed because I had a big friends growing up, my age group. And now I came here, that fear of starting all over, not knowing who to be a friend with. And and also even when I started school, there was also the shock, like the cultural shock of blending in with the kids here, because also I felt inferior to them. So I needed a lot of work personally to help me feel confident to be able to speak in classes or group participations. I was just terrified because they would speak so fast and I felt like I had an accent and they won't understand me. So I was so intimidated, and I even used to tell my mom, I want to go back. I think you made a mistake bringing me here, because I already had a life going on for me, and I had my friends, and I know everything was fine. So it was all this shock that, like it felt like they just take a young kid and then they throw you out there, and now you have to figure it out. But then you know that you have opportunities, but how do you dig them out? How do you know what to do? Like, that orientation. How do you know who to talk to, where to go to? I mean, in university, I've never written a paper, like, like do a research and like, like bibliography and references. So the first shock to me was when they gave us an assignment to write something like that. Even though I was already in university back home, our system of education is completely different. I remember they couldn't grade me because they couldn't even find a thesis in that paper, and I was so shocked. So the teacher had to call me and ask me to like go through my paper, and we had a struggle. And so all those things were like, oh my God, this is not the dream I wanted. This is not the Canada I wanted to be. But slowly
I'm sure that you can say that, now the Canada that of course you're living in is something that you're happy with in terms of how your journey has panned out, right?
Yeah. It was just the learning process, and I adapted after a while. It was stressful in the beginning, but once you adapt, like it starts going like very fast. You start understanding how things are going, and it starts beginning to make sense.
Mm-hmm.
And now you start understanding why you have to make maybe a bibliography when you write a paper.
Yes. What you highlighted, of course, kind of speaks to, and I'm glad that you were able to share an experience that you went through as a child, or, for someone who moved earlier in their life, you can talk to the experience that so many others have who come with their families, and who know, because as say professionals, we maybe face a different set of challenges, but kids coming in with their families have a whole different set of challenges that they face. So it's interesting how today's panel can kind of reflect on all of those. And of course, it may not always be a rosy picture for anyone moving to Canada. And, through these chats, we want to talk about all of those things, to not present that, of course, Canada, sure, is a land of opportunities, but I mean, there could be a fair bit of struggle for people, or there could be some challenges and barriers along the way, but then there are ways to overcome those with the kind of support that is available through various levels of government, or through organizations, and through immigrants like you who are willing to help others. Charlotte, briefly, if you could share, what were your initial thoughts of Canada?
So I listened to Martina, and I see a lot of difference in our experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, she came when she was 19. I came when I was old. I won't reveal my year. But the truth is, I came from Kenya when I was coming to Canada, fresh from Kenya. And I don't know about other African countries. I've visited quite a few, but Kenya is quite developed. We have beautiful cities. I come from Kisumu, which is a big city by Lake Victoria. So the cityness in Kenya, makes me look at Africa differently.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is I have traveled quite a bit, especially in Europe. So I feel like I'm in a place where I can compare a little differences here and there. And one of the things I noticed about Canada, it's massive. Living in the UK, we had to squeeze, what do we call, washing machines in the kitchen. Because, and when you come to Canada, you see there's always like a laundry room. There's a lot of space. And even when you drive around, there's a lot of land. And you look at that in terms of Europe, I find Europe, things a little cute and cozy. And I loved it because that's the differences we find in different cities. So every city has a character. But then coming back to my situation in Canada, for me, it was more of, I looked at it in terms of, this is going to be my new home. It's a very conscious decision. And actually, by the time I was coming to Canada, I had been denied visa 4 times. So because my husband was here, but I couldn't visit him. Every time I applied to visit, because I was working at the university there, I was denied. And that's the first time I ever got denied a visa. I hope there's no other country listening to me and planning to deny me visas. But anyway, so when I came, my expectations were high, because surely a country that denies people visas like that, there has to be something in that country. Honestly, I was not disappointed. When I came in, I think my expectations were met in terms of, organized and just the way, and as a parent, I wanted a place for my children. I look at things in terms of hospital and school, because I was making sure I'm living what I'm living in Kenya for a good reason. So it worked for me. Number two, probably building up, because I was very aware that when you move as a professional, you have to have the right mindset to start from somewhere. So I was coming here knowing very well at some point I will have to start from somewhere. So again, I feel like Canada has been very kind to me with regards to jobs. And that's why I passionately support other people that are looking for jobs, because I feel like everyone should be able to see that side of Canada. There are no jobs, but with some good strategies, you can get yourself something. So I feel like sometimes you're not just doing our good job to know where is it that we can go with our skills. So those are some of the
just for the job search bit, I would ask you to just hold your thought, because that is definitely something that we will be coming back to. Sorry to interrupt. Was there anything else you wanted to probably add? Then I'll ask Gayathri about hers as well.
I think that is it for now. I think I'll hold my horses in the meantime. Yeah.
Thank you. Gayathri, if you could share your first impression, and I do have a follow-up question for you after.
Sure. Wow. I'm already so absorbed by hearing all of your stories, and I can relate to so much of what you had said, Martina, coming as a teenager, and also you, Anam, you came as when you were young. I was 15 when I moved. And Charlotte, you came as you were already a parent. So it's a different experience, but similar in so many ways. For me, I know my first impressions was I was very taken aback by the beauty of Canada. I was lucky that I came in the summer, so that could be a factor. But I remember landing in Calgary, and I'd never seen a pine tree, an evergreen kind of forest type of thing. And our friends had taken us to Banff and Lake Louise and shown us the Rocky Mountains. And I instantly fell in love with this land and just felt so lucky to be part of it, because I had grown up in a climate which was much hotter, tropical climate, near an ocean, also in a desert area. So this was such a contrast for me from an environment perspective. And then also I got to see sort of my own challenges integrating into schools, like the culture shock aspect, but I think more so my parents. My dad specifically, even though he had gained immigration to Canada as a skilled worker, he was repeatedly denied jobs on the basis that he didn't have Canadian experience, though he had plenty of international experience, and he was an engineer. And so it felt very ironic that Canada would accept someone like him for his engineering experience and skill set. And then yet when you land in the country, you're repeatedly told that you don't have Canadian experience. So that was a struggle that my family faced. And I started to see that as I was growing up, as to how much sacrifice that they had to make. And even for my own, I guess, work ethic that started to follow through that. I kept watching both my parents work so hard, including my mom. She started working in different types of entry-level jobs just to be able to support the family. So I think that really instilled a sense of hard work for me, and to see that they still, despite those challenges, like Charlotte said, you still find your way, right? Martina, you were saying this too. Nothing makes sense at the beginning, but you still find your way, and both of them did, and they've been an inspiration for me, and part of the reason why I wanted to share their story also in landed.
Thank you. Now, my question was more about, you all mentioned in many ways, and I think that is something that I saw in your chapters, Martina's, Gayathri, Anam, somewhere a little bit about, either culture shock or adjusting to a new place. Anam, you spoke about the challenges of, like, you thought Toronto was very welcoming, and then in Calgary, you probably had a very different experience. And Gayathri, you spoke about, of course, when your father came here with an engineering degree, but he wasn't able to find a meaningful job in that profession. And as a child, that is something that you witness, and it shapes your opinion as well. And of course, as Martina was mentioning earlier, for anyone who was moved at an earlier stage of their life, I think you have a very different experience in adjusting in your school environment, making friends. And Martina, of course, you shared that. So I'd like to know from all of you, and Gayathri, beginning with you, very briefly, if you could tell me, some ways that you would recommend for anybody going through these scenarios. What is a way to probably overcome such a barrier? We have discussed how one feels in that moment, but what can be done to kind of overcome that moment? So Gayathri, I'll begin with you and then move on to Martina.
Yeah, for sure. That's a great question. I think the first thing is having self-awareness. Sometimes we tend to feel consumed by a problem, but we think it's only us, or we think that there's nobody else can really understand or relate to the specific types of challenges we're facing. And just having that self-awareness to realize that actually maybe I'm not the problem, maybe problem. And we know that from data and statistics, right? That immigrants do face that challenge of when they move. Many times their foreign credentials aren't recognized. And so I think once you have that self-awareness, then you can start to make connections and build your networks to figure out strategies to start to overcome that. So that would be one thing I would offer up.
That's great. Martina, what would you add there in terms of, of course, beyond making friends, what are some ways to feel accepted, and what are some ways to sharing, maybe building on what Gayathri just shared in terms of like volunteering or networking with people to create that network around you?
To me, it was to be open. When you go through stuff, some people's personalities are different, but I've never been the child who is shy not to talk. So what helped me was that I will ask so many questions. I'm always with a book and a pen. I've always been like that from when I was like 4 or 5. So I'm always asking people questions on the bus. I don't care whoever I meet. So what my story was really interesting because I got accepted to the university. I got a student card before my acceptance letter came because I went to that office like every day. I kept asking them questions and I kept saying, I'm from this country. Are there other children from this country in this school? How am I going to adapt? So when you talk to people, it helps a lot. So my encouragement to any newcomer is not to be timid, not to be shy. You will always get help when you speak out. If you don't speak out, people might, we will not understand if you're struggling or not. But if you're able to explain that I am looking for work and can you help me? You can get guidance on, is it maybe resume fixing that you're struggling with? Is it interview skills? And that's how I got those. And that's how people started sending me to different YMCAs or Lasses Skill World to go learn how to prepare for interviews and fix my resumes. I mean, there were lots of rejection, but once you repeat the process over and over, it becomes now you can even speak it to people. I can teach people this is how you do it because I've repeated it over and over. But the good thing I'll say, you cannot be quiet if you want help. You need to talk.
Yeah. And that's a very great point that you made. Anam, when I asked you this question earlier, I would like you to emphasize more on the point when in your story you share the difference that you felt in, say, Toronto and Calgary. And also maybe it wasn't specifically because of the people in Calgary, but you also experienced toxic corporate culture is something that you mentioned. So some ways that, because as immigrants, as refugees, when we move to a country and the experience could be very different, the culture could be different, people may not necessarily be mean because they want to be mean to you. There might just be a difference of opinion on how we accept different cultures as well. If you could share your thoughts on this.
Absolutely. No, I'm happy to. So the one thing is that I learned from life in general so far, that suffering is the part of human existence, right? So that part we cannot deny. So when we immigrate, the whole point is to get a new sense of direction to life and to explore more opportunities for ourselves and to have that personal growth. And that would look different for different people. But the idea is personal growth behind immigration and seeking a place to feel safe and call that place home. So when we moved, I was 16 when we landed in Toronto. And so basically I started my journey in high school in Toronto. And I think the challenges were there in terms of, my dad was, again, supporting the idea of Gayathri that, similar struggles, like my dad being an engineer and he got the credentials from different organizations before moving to Canada to improve his chances to find work, but it was not as straightforward as he thought. So the reason it felt that it was the right place was because when I went to the school, I felt being there was cultural diversity, but at the same time there was a sense of acceptance, as well as the system of education seemed to make more sense that could help me to be a better person, for example. So that's how I evaluated the system. So the system was very different from what I was used to, but at the same time I was open, or I was more comfortably embracing that new education system. And the school, how I felt at school basically defined how I feel about Canada. So the other struggles that were happening in terms of my parents finding livelihood, or finding places to stay, all those external factors, those were there, but my focus was on a school. And I felt like, because the education of a nation says a lot about the place itself. So based on the education I was receiving and how I felt in that environment, that was my determining factor to say that, you know what, we are in the right place. Sure, the struggles are there, and struggles can exist anywhere at any time, but this is reassuring. So if you're moving to Canada with kids, or if you yourself are moving to Canada in a stage of life where you will be going to school, I think that could be a very important factor to consider, about your decision about moving to Canada. The second part is that, yes, when I moved from Toronto to Calgary, again, it was within Canada, but it felt like a new immigration, because the provincial systems could be different, province to province, and then given that Toronto is a metropolitan city, Calgary is a mid-sized city, so and then the whole environment is very different. So when I moved to Calgary, it was an adjustment in terms of getting used to the norms and the culture of that particular city, which is different from Toronto. So, and it took me some time to embrace or adopt those new traditions, or developing that understanding with people. So the lesson behind all this is that the important part is to realize is that the positivity comes through us. So we would be experiencing a lot of challenges, or let's say when we move to a different place and understanding the people, and they might not be able to understand us right away either, but to have a dialogue to create that understanding, it is very important to stay positive with your own attitude. So surely you could be looked at differently. Maybe people will give you a certain look, or they might say something about the accent, or something that you do that is not considered as a regular practice. But if you are positive to share about yourself, why you do what you do, or acknowledging that, oh, I came from this place and this is how we used to do it, but I'm happy to learn about how things are done differently. And so through your own positivity, you could actually conquer a lot. So I think the bottom line here is that, my first adjustment was in Toronto when I moved from Pakistan to Toronto. Then my second adjustment was from Toronto to Calgary. And when I moved to Calgary, I moved all on my own, not even a single family member when I moved to Calgary. So I literally had one suitcase and I started my life in Calgary on my own. And then the things that were important was self-care. Again, self-care is very important because that's how it affects your ability to stay positive, regardless of your external circumstances. So self-care, and then being positive, and keeping that positive attitude towards people, and keeping that curiosity that, okay, why they do what they do, and learn about them. So these three components, I believe, are very universal. So no matter what part of the world you are in, or what circumstances you are in, these three things, I think, could be very helpful to navigate while going through the challenges of life.
Thank you for sharing that. I mean, what you highlighted, and I could see Martina taking some notes, and I'm guessing and I'm hoping that the attendees are too, because there's so much advice in what you shared through your journey. And of course, secondary migration is something that a lot of people experience after moving to Canada. You realize that your work can take you to a different province or a city. You realize that, maybe in terms of work-life balance or just opportunities that exist for you, you might want to move. And adjusting is, I think, something which is key for immigrants. We know that skill. That's the reason why we're able to move to a different country, and we can perfect that skill with each move or with each decision. So thank you for sharing that. And of course, kudos to you. I wanted to also add that, you are someone who then from there on moved on to have that role as becoming a member of the Legislative Assembly. And then, as a politician, you were able to talk about policies and bring about a change in what you saw that wasn't probably okay at that time.
Yeah,
So
no,
thank you.
absolutely. And then in terms of I just realized that there was another element to your question about the corporate culture. And yes, given the fact that my background is in engineering and it's a male dominant profession, and still they're working on the the inclusion part of the profession, but that's what it was like when I joined the workforce. And and I was the only female a person of color in the team. And so definitely it was an experience where I was, and also as an immigrant as well, I was fairly new to Canada even at that point. So it was there were times when there was a feeling of alienation, where you're not acknowledged, or you feel like as if you're not being seen, you're not being heard, you're not being respected for who you are and what you bring to the table. So those challenges are real. And so in that particular case, what happened was that, so in my story as well, I mentioned too, that whoever I could build my friendships with within that organization, although all these things were happening, in the same place, I was able to find friends who are my friends even today, for example. So there is always the the coexistence of, it's a combination of experiences, I would say. In some cases, it might be more clear to say that, hey, this is it's a very positive experience, and it could look like that. But there are instances, oftentimes, where it's usually a combination of incidents and a combination of experiences. And that's the reason in the book Landed, I called my story The Dusky Dawn, for the same reason, because of the complexities and coexistence of the emotions. Yeah.
Thank you for adding that as well. Something that was also highlighted in some of your answers, and Gayathri mentioned it too, was Canadian experience. Charlotte, with that, I want to come to you. And I want to ask you, about your journey of understanding, or probably as you started applying for a job, what was it like for you? And of course, now you're in a position wherein you're helping newcomer job seekers, all job seekers around, in getting the right role. So what role do you think? I understand that Canadian experience isn't something which is outright asked, but it is expected. It's more of a local experience to be able to showcase your ability to do the job that you're applying for. But how would you advise newcomers to bridge that gap in their resumes, in making sure that they're able to showcase the experience, the skills that make them fit for a job?
Thank you so much, Shruti. In my case, when I came here, so many people were telling me to forget about my PhD, because I came here with my PhD, and people are like, don't bother with that, just look for a job, in some of the fast food restaurants or supermarkets, which I really appreciated, because those places have people that really serve us, and they really keep us going. Sometimes I look at, during COVID, the people that were risking their lives out there are this group of people. So the only thing is, that was not where my passion was at that particular time. There is something else I wanted to do, and it was not that. I've always been a teacher facilitating, talking. I'm always talking. So I wanted a position where I am more client-facing or student-facing. And I knew that it's possible to get it. So as I mentioned at the beginning, I had already worked in employability skills section in London, where I worked with refugees, people who are considered refugees. And when I came here, I kind of, remember the things I was doing, and I thought I could find something. So the first thing I did was I needed to understand what a Canadian resume looked like, something that was familiar to the hiring managers here. And I found help at Calgary Immigrant Women's Association. And I didn't have to pay anyone to do that for me, So that's the beauty of sometimes looking for the immigrant serving agencies in your city. And then once I got help from there, and I talked to somebody because I wanted an employment counselor in this city to tell me, based on my experiences, my past experience, what are some of the opportunities I would go for. And I had a very good conversation with somebody who told me about Link, because I'm traditionally an English language teacher. So this person told me about Link. I never knew about Link before, language instruction for newcomers, And I thought, I used to be an ESOL tutor. That is what it was called in London. Yeah. So it's the same thing. And then I was like, good. So I wanted to get that Canadian experience within the city. And Canadian experience, I don't know how other people look at it, but for me, it is just an opportunity for you to know how things are done in your new place. So I went and started volunteering. Some of the places I volunteered at are Calgary Public Library, because there are so many people there trying to learn English. So I offered my services for free for two reasons. Number one, so that I can have a reference within Calgary. And number two, so that I get to have an experience communicating with people within my new city. And that was how I landed on my first job at SIWA. I became a language instructor there, and I started supporting the women that I was teaching at that particular time in finding jobs. And my first cohort had 11 women, and 7 out of 11 were hired by the time I was done with them. So Wonderful. It really encouraged me, because I was like, so the tactics I'm using are really working. And the other thing about my background is research, so I research a lot I kind of always want to know the current trends, what is going on out there. So that has helped me, and I have, kind of moved. So I was at SIWA years back. I moved to other organizations. Right now, I am at the university working with PhD students. So, that is how I've been moving. And one thing I will encourage other immigrants to think about, and so many of us have mentioned it today, accent. From a linguistic perspective, we all have accents. It could be a British accent, it could be a Canadian accent, but we all have an accent. And accent should not be the one thing that makes you discouraged. I speak in my accent with so much confidence, and I'm happy to say it again if you didn't understand. And I'm also happy to ask you if I didn't understand. So accent should not be a barrier for us to communicate. Go and speak in the interview and let them give you a job. If you don't speak up, how will you get a job? So I share some of these tips, how to write your resumes, how to do well in your interviews, and how to network around, and some of the things some of my peers here have mentioned. Interact with people, talk. Tell somebody I'm looking for a job. You never know, you could be talking to a hiring manager, and just form new friends. This thing of, if I come from Kenya, my friends are only Kenyans. I only eat in a Kenyan restaurant. We are blessed to have 2 homes. So this is our other home. Let's just embrace it and learn from other cultures. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. Martina, I'd ask you the same question. Of course, because Charlotte was able to talk about 2 things. One, talk about some of the skills that one can highlight to probably in their job search, and also other skills in life that would help them in their growth and in their life in Canada. What would be your thoughts, and what is something that you would want to add here?
Yeah, I see a lot of similarities with everything that Charlotte was just sharing. So for me also, when you come in, there's always that fear of the unknown. I don't know about other people. I had that fear of the unknown. And for you to grow, sometimes you have to kick some of those negative thoughts that you bring in from your mind, because you start feeling less without anybody calling you less. But you placed yourself in that level. You start feeling like you're a minority. And then there's so many things that positive stories, or like every day the news has so many things, but now you choose which ones you want to absorb for your growth. But now, like she said, so when you come in as a Black immigrant, they start telling you, don't do this program because it's for white people. Like me, they told me, why did you do public administration? It's for white people and you're going to have a hard time getting a job. So I started like dwelling on those things, and it was really draining me. So another thing too, you need a support system, like a mentor, whoever you talk to. I used my parents because my parents came here too. They all had PhDs. Like everyone said, they also struggled. They were adults, and then they had us. I saw my mom cry a lot, and I was so scared because I was like, if my parents are going through this, I also had that fear. I'm like, what if I'm also going to suffer like them, you know? So I started networking, like meeting people from church. That's I would talk to anybody, whoever. I go to them and I cry. I'm like, I'll even speak for my family's sake. I'm like, my parents are struggling with this. Can you help? Because if my parents are stressed, I feel stressed too. Like it's affecting me. It's affecting even my studies, you know, because the challenges that you have at home, you bring them wherever you go. Even if you have a job, you realize that you're stressing, you're sad, and you're not able to perform. So we all need that support system. When you come, find a very strong support system, that someone you can share openly your challenges, and someone that also has a vision or experience that will be able to guide you. Like, you know, so I made friends with older people. So I came as a teenager, but I had friends because my siblings were younger. So when I would take them to the park, I talked to other mothers. I talked to other parents that bring their kids to the park, and I asked lots of questions. And when I come home, I felt like I was more like the instructor in my house. I would tell them, this is what they do in Canada. This is how Thanksgiving is celebrated, because we didn't know all this culture. So I would share the ideas. They said, you do the turkey, you did this. And so just from that, like talking with people. And also sometimes we give up so soon, because when we come, you just feel like, once I apply for this, I should get it. Like Charlotte said, she applied for her Canadian visa the first time, it was a no. 4 times, she had 4 no's. And so you don't give up because you have a no. It's okay to feel bad. It's okay to sit and cry about it and feel rejected and all that. I've gone through it and I understand it. It makes you feel bad as a person, like, oh, I'm a good student. I work so hard. And, you know, you start applying for those jobs. You realize the reality, the real world is not like that, you know, and you start feeling like, I got depressed. For me, like, I won't talk to people, and the only time I'll talk to my friends is only to find out if they're also suffering like me. If they're not,
but you know, with what you shared,
so we have a pity party, like, this is how Canada is not good for us and all that. But then you have to remember to come out from that place. And I'm very glad that I had my mom's support. When I'm depressed, she'll let me be for a bit, and then she'll come back to my room and say, you have to keep applying. Because I was already applying for jobs through FSWEP, the Federal Student Work Program. So I had my account and I would apply, and I would, like, they wouldn't call me. I wouldn't pass the online exams and everything. So I was so discouraged. But my mom said, you have to keep applying. You can't stop. You never know.
I would interrupt here for a quick second. You know, the whole part about, of course, keep applying, and that is the way that one would be successful in their job search. But just in the interest of time, I would ask you, for your job search, what would be the one thing that you would want to definitely tell the attendees today and everyone who will watch us later? What helped you in your job search? What would be that one big takeaway that you would like to share with everyone?
My job basically is still about talking to people, because you know, sometimes you go online and you search what you think you're interested in, like the title, like what you want to work. But then I kept asking other people from different departments, like people that already had, and I kept asking, do you guys have an opening? Can you just send me like the link or the job title you have? So just that fact that I talked to them, I had idea of there's an opening here for a clerk, or there's an opening here for a program assistant. So when I go into my job search thing in the GC website, like the government website, I put those words. So those, like, it would bring out jobs that have all those similarities. Then I can see what I'm interested in, the different departments or the different like territories where they are located, where I want to apply to. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Anam, I would ask you next, you know, while continuing this theme of job search and while continuing this theme of career advancement, what would you want to add in terms of upskilling or the need to constantly be in that mode of learning in Canada?
Yes, I think the key is to keeping that perspective. The key is to keep to have that perspective that continuous learning is very helpful, and like learning from through conversations or getting those credentials and signing up for different programs. And I felt like this has been a journey until today. And even now, today, I'm talking to you all. I'm in the process where I'm still learning right now. So because when I switched careers or when I worked for different industries, I first of all kept my mind open to embrace new opportunities and thinking that, okay, if there is something different than what I have done in the past, if it is something that is of interest to me and it makes me curious and excited, I should pursue it. So there's another realization, because when we immigrate, from our countries to the countries of origin to Canada or any other country, sometimes there is a thought that, okay, this is what I had been doing throughout my life, so I am probably not capable of doing anything else. I think that's a very big shift that happens, because that's when life challenges us. I think the biggest epiphany one can have after immigrating is the fact that you realize, oh my God, I'm capable of doing so many other things which I did not realize I'm capable of doing. so that's the moment. You could consider it as a blessing or a curse. That's up to you. But that moment of realization hits you that and I think that in some cases, yes, people could find something within their area of expertise from what they started, but as we all know, at this point, doesn't matter what part of the world is, that we are realizing that learning is a continuous process, as well as we are continuously evolving, and there's so much more to us than we realize in terms of what we can do.
Yeah.
So with the job search too, I think it's important to keep that option open, that okay, sure, I have been doing have been focused on a certain field, but you know what, there could be other opportunities for me where I can which I can consider, which might be a new territory initially, but you have more potential than you think, and it is normal, in case anybody's wondering, because it might feel like I'm the only one because I'm a new immigrant, or the accent part is a very good point Charlotte raised. And oftentimes we started to think of things that probably prevent us from thinking positively about ourselves. But I think thinking positively of ourselves is the first step to maintain that positivity that is very much needed while we are navigating those challenges and while we are in the process of job search. So I think understanding that I'm a fully capable person, and I am fully capable of learning new things, and and then just maintaining that positive attitude is, I think, really important in that case. And you're not alone in this, and it's a process. It takes time. It requires a lot of interaction and learning, and having faith in yourself, and just so those things are important.
Thank you for that. That is something that all of you through your journeys have repeated, and it needs to be repeated, because that is what an immigrant needs to remember, that there would be tough times, but then, it's that resilience, it's the perseverance that takes you forward. Gayathri, with what Anam was sharing, you're also someone who, in your chapter, you shared that you switched careers and you realize at some point about your passion for storytelling. So, continuing the thought, what would be your very quick tips, because we are short on time, but when it comes to advancing in one's career, or realizing that, hey, what I've been working towards may not really be the thing for me, and you realize that you could switch your career or move into maybe starting your own business and so on. So what would be those tips that you have?
Yeah, first I just want to say I love all the points. I'm just resonating so much with what you shared too, Martina and Charlotte, about everything from networking, accents, and what you said about the positivity that we need to embody, right? My quick take would be know your strengths. That's, I think, the biggest lesson I've learned too through going from engineering into entrepreneurship now is knowing your strengths means knowing that whatever skills or experience you've gained in different roles, you can absolutely transfer them. You can absolutely learn new things, as well as rely on your foundation of the strengths that you've built. And I think that happens through knowing our own story first. And this is why I'm passionate about storytelling too, is because even as Anam said, as an engineer, I also faced similar challenges of being the only woman, the only minority in this male-dominated field. And often I wouldn't always hear this sort of external validation of what my strengths were. And it wasn't until I took the time to understand my own story and understand the identities that I carry through my own sort of path that I've taken to come here, that I realized what my strengths were and that I was confident enough to make that transition. So that would be, if I could summarize it in that one line, as knowing your strengths and never forgetting that, never letting anyone else make you doubt yourself.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Largely through your experiences, the goal today for us was to be able to talk about life in Canada, to be able to talk about work in Canada, maybe challenges in the workplace, or in finding work during your job search process, in overcoming those obstacles. So thank you all for sharing those experiences. Just before we wrap up, a quick question for Gayathri, because I think you're the one who kind of brought all of these women together for the book, and all of you are representing so many others who are in this book with you and have contributed their chapters. So what would be a message that you would want to share with the viewers in terms of why one should probably go and get this book, and what are they likely to learn from the different journeys that have been expressed in personal stories of all the authors?
Yeah. So it's once been described to me that this book is like the emotional guide to immigration, which I think as you start to go through the stories, and I love Martina, Charlotte, and Anam, you've shared some beautiful experiences too in this book. And as you start to go through them, you see that you're not alone in this journey, and the ups and downs are always there. They coexist, like Anam said. And that would be, I think, the source of inspiration that I hope that readers will find, especially if they are immigrants themselves. I would also say for those who are maybe second, third generation Canadians, I think this book is also important because I truly want this to be an experience of empathy for them, to be able to put themselves in the shoes of someone who does identify as an immigrant and see the things that bind us together as our common humanity, but also see that there are struggles and that there are still stereotypes and biases and racism and sexism and all of these challenges that continue to consume many of our journeys. And it's important now more than ever because Canada, as we know, is welcoming more and more newcomers every day, right? It's 500,000 new immigrants a year. And we're becoming a country, like I know the statistics in Calgary is 6 out of 10 now identify as either first or second generation immigrants. Mm-hmm. So with this level of diversity, it's almost non-negotiable that to be in a place where, I don't know, or I can't understand, empathize. So I think storytelling is a very natural way to invoke curiosity. And so I hope that for anyone who reads this, that it does bring that experience of empathy, and also that it brings that experience of not feeling like you're alone. So wonderful. That's what I have to say.
Now, in 30 seconds each, Anam, Charlotte, and Martina, if you would like to share any additional thoughts on your chapter, or why one should probably pick up a copy of this book, or a message that you have in terms of just a quick 2-word message about for immigrants watching this. Anam?
Yes, absolutely. So I would say that, believing in yourself and acknowledging that the challenges are going to be there. Some days would be better than other. And even today, when I'm doing this interview, I would say that even now I am in the process of finding opportunities, although I have an area of specialization of sustainability, for example, right now. But even now I am having conversations with people, talking to people, and finding those opportunities. And in terms of, people embracing me for who I am or not embracing me, it's an everyday process. So you get to experience both. So I would say that that's the reality of it. However, the part that's important is that having that belief in yourself and putting your best foot forward, and maintaining that positive attitude is what is going to help you go through all that. And that is what has been helping me even now when I'm having difficult days, and that give me hope to move forward. In terms of my story, I would definitely say The Dusky Dawn talks about that complexity and coexistence of all kinds of experiences, because those experiences are they complement to one another. And I think that complementarity is something that's very important to have, because there was once a movie I was watching, and they were saying, what is happiness? And they were doing the analysis of the brain, and they realized that the combination of experiences is what actually brings about the sensation of happiness. So if we do not have that combination of experiences, I think the life could potentially be boring, and boredom is not good for the quality of life either. So just take it as something as necessary to really enjoy the essence of life, the combination of experiences.
A lovely message to be, I think, closing with. Thank you. Charlotte, quickly, anything that you have to add here?
Yeah, I would just like to add that we are now in Canada. We have chosen Canada as our home. We all had different reasons to be here. Some are unfortunately sad reasons. Some are, fortunately great reasons. And now that this is our home, let's make it work. If you need support to find a job, I'm a career development specialist, and we are 1 million in this country. Find help so that you can get something to do. And if you have other issues, I think the government tries to have places where we can run to. Let's seek help if we have to. But that is what I would like to maybe say as we wrap up. Yeah,
that's a great message. Thank you. Martina, lastly, coming to you, and very quickly, if you'd like to add any thoughts here.
For me, what I'll say to anyone who's new is not to give up on your dreams. If you came here and you had a dream to be a doctor, yes, there'll be challenges, but do not let anyone talk you out of your dream. Stay focused. Embrace your challenges as a pathway to the full potential that you will achieve. So I also work as a care aide while I was waiting to get a job in my field, and I embraced it. They still call me from time to time. They miss me. I volunteer now. I go there to talk to the elderly people, because I felt like I had to go through that challenge and that low to get to the top place where So I'll encourage every newcomer, embrace those challenges. Don't let them break you. Everyone has had them. Even when you see us now, you hear this one works for the government, this one is a resource manager and all that. And you're like, oh my God, it just didn't happen like that. Some of us had challenges. So I want to encourage everybody who comes here not to give up on their dreams. Just keep living your dream. It might take long, it might come fast, but keep it up.
Thank you so much. All of your journeys. I really have to thank all 4 of you for joining us here, sharing your journeys, such inspiring messages, and of course your experiences that I'm sure will guide the viewers of this session. Thank you also to attendees who joined us. This was a session where we talked about immigration experiences. The book that we mentioned, we will be selecting one person from those who attended this session here on Zoom or on YouTube, and we will let you know about the winner in our post communication of this session, wherein we will be telling you also about where you could get a copy. So thank you so much to everyone who joined us today. We organize these Café New Canadian sessions from time to time, and would love for you to join us in the next one. The best way to stay updated is if you follow us on social media, or if you sign up for our newsletter, which is a monthly newsletter, wherein you would get updates about events, but also lots of other articles and videos that would help you in your Canadian life and work, and hopefully lead you to success. We also have a YouTube channel, of course, and that is packed with lots of informative and resources, videos and resources that would definitely help you in your Canadian journey, whether you're here in Canada or planning to move soon. Thank you so much once again to the panelists and attendees. Have a good one.